Here's a fun fact to ruin your day. In the 13th century, one man killed so many people that the planet literally got cooler. That's not a bit. Scientists estimate his conquests emptied so much farmland that forests grew back over it, pulled carbon out of the air, and measurably changed the climate. He is, to this day, the only human being in history with a carbon-negative body count. His name was Genghis Khan. Well, eventually. And here's the part that actually breaks people's brains. The guy started with nothing. And I don't mean humble beginnings. I mean an abandoned kid on the frozen Mongolian steppe, digging up roots for dinner, spending part of his teens as a slave, who somehow ended up running the largest land empire humanity has ever produced. For scale, the entire Roman Empire would fit inside it about 4 times, with change left over for Alexander's. So how does a starving, fatherless kid go from eating rats to owning half the known world?
Mostly by holding grudges. Let me explain. Our story starts around 1162, near the Onan River in what's now Mongolia. A baby boy is born to Yesugei, a minor clan chieftain, basically middle management of the steppe, and his wife, Hoelun. And according to legend, the kid comes out of the womb clutching a blood clot in his tiny fist. Now, most babies are born holding nothing because they're babies, but in Mongol tradition, a blood clot meant this child was destined to become a great warrior and leader. The shamans called it, and honestly, credit where it's due, they nailed that one. The boy is named Temüjin. Remember that name, because Genghis Khan is a job title he hasn't earned yet. For 9 years, life is fine. Then Dad ruins everything by getting poisoned. Yesugei is riding home across the steppe and stops for dinner with some Tartars, a rival tribe he'd personally fought. Why would you eat dinner with your enemies? Because steppe hospitality rules said you fed travelers, even ones you hated, and the Tartars followed the rules. They fed him. They just also poisoned the food. With Dad gone, the tribe takes one look at the widow Hoelun and her pile of children and makes an executive decision. Nope, they pack up the entire camp and abandon the family on the open steppe to die. They don't die. Hoelun, quietly one of the toughest humans in this whole story, keeps her kids alive on roots, fish, and whatever small animals they can catch. And this is where Temüjin learns lesson number 1. Nobody is coming to save you. It's also where we learn something about him, because during those starving years, his older half-brother Bekta kept taking his food. A fish here, a bird there. So one day, teenage Temüjin and his younger brother grabbed their bows, snuck up on Bekta from both sides, and shot him. Killed his own brother. Over a fish. I need you to lock this in, because it is the single most important rule of this entire video. Do not take this man's stuff. It will come up again, repeatedly, at an increasingly civilizational scale. Anyway, word gets around, and the Temüjin, his father's old allies, decide the murder child is a future problem. So they raid the camp, capture Temüjin, and enslave him with a wooden collar locked around his neck. But here's where you see the other thing that made him dangerous. People just liked him. A sympathetic guard helps him slip away. He hides in a river, breathing through the reeds, while search parties walk right past him, and he escapes. Soon, young warriors like Boorchu and Jelm start showing up out of nowhere to follow him. No pay, no land, just vibes. That's called charisma, and Temüjin had a terrifying amount of it. Around age 16, Temüjin cashes in the one asset his father left him, a marriage arrangement. He weds Borta of the Ongarat tribe, and for about 5 minutes, things are looking up. Then the Merkit tribe raids his camp and kidnaps her. Why? Because decades earlier, Temüjin's dad had stolen Hoelun, his mom, from a Merkit man. The steppe has a long memory, and this was payback. But the Merkits had made one critical miscalculation, and you already know what it is. Say it with me. They took his stuff. Temüjin, who at this point commands roughly nothing, recruits 2 powerful friends. 1. Togril, also called Ong Khan, ruler of the mighty Karait tribe and his late father's sworn brother. 2. Jamuka, his childhood best friend and blood brother. They'd sworn loyalty to each other 3 separate times. Together they raise an army, flatten the Merkits, and rescue Borta. Small wrinkle. About 9 months after the rescue, Borta gives birth to a son, Jochi. 9 months. After a kidnapping. You can do the math on that. Temüjin chose not to. He claimed Jochi as his own son, full stop, and shut down anyone who raised an eyebrow.
which is weirdly progressive for a man whose primary problem-solving tool is arrows. But keep that paternity question in your back pocket, because it's going to detonate the family group chat later. Through the 1180s and 90s, Temüjin builds his following, and here's where he breaks the entire steppe operating system. Every other chief promoted their cousins and drinking buddies. Temüjin promoted whoever was good. You're a random shepherd who happens to be a genius with a bow? Congratulations, you're an officer now. Talent and loyalty beat bloodline every single time. That sounds obvious in a job interview today. In the 1190s, it was a revolution, and it meant the most capable killers in Mongolia all had an excellent reason to work for this one guy. Which brings us to the breakup. Temüjin and Genghis, blood brothers, remember, both wanted the top job, and the steppe was not big enough for two of them. The bromance collapses into open war, and Genghis spends years building coalition after coalition against his old friend. One by one, Temüjin takes everyone apart. The Tatars, the tribe that poisoned his dad, annihilated. He reportedly ordered every male taller than a wagon axle executed. And this is your scheduled reminder that the protagonist of this video is not a good man. He is merely a spectacularly effective one. The Temüjin, who enslaved him as a kid, crushed. Their chiefs executed, some accounts say boiled. Their people absorbed straight into his army. Togrul, his father figure? Once the Kherate turned on him, Temüjin destroyed them too. By 1204, everyone who had ever poisoned, enslaved, robbed, or betrayed his family was either dead or working for him. And Genghis? His own men eventually betrayed him and dragged him to Temüjin, expecting a fat reward. Temüjin executed the traitors, because if there was one thing he could not stomach, it was disloyalty, even when it helped him, and then offered his old friend his life back. Genghis refused. He asked for a noble death instead, and he got one. So in 1206, at a great assembly called a Kurultai, held near the Onon River, the same river he was born beside because the man understood narrative, the United Tribes proclaimed Temüjin ruler of all Mongols under a new name, Genghis Khan, universal ruler. The kid who ate roots now owns every tent, horse, and human between Siberia and the Gobi. Most men would call that a career. Genghis called it a starting point.
First, he rebuilds Mongol society from scratch. The army gets reorganized into clean units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. Promotion by merit, discipline like iron. He issues a written law code, the Yasa, banning theft, feuding, and adultery. Rich, coming from him, but fine. And religion? Genghis genuinely does not care. Buddhist, Muslim, Christian, shamanist, pray to whoever you like, as long as you pay your taxes and show up to archery practice. He personally answers only to Tengri, the eternal blue sky, who has apparently issued him a permission slip for the entire planet. Then, the machine switches on. First target, Xixia, the Tangut Kingdom of northwest China. By 1209, they've submitted and agreed to cough up troops and tribute. Consider that the tutorial level. Remember them though. Next, 1211, the Jin dynasty of northern China. An actual superpower, millions of subjects, giant walled cities. The Jin emperor demands Genghis kneel as a vassal. Genghis's counteroffer is a full-scale invasion, and by 1215, the Mongols have captured and torched the Jin capital of Zhongdu, that's modern-day Beijing, proving to the entire world that city walls were now merely a suggestion. But everything you've seen so far? Warm up. Because in 1218, one middle manager in Central Asia makes what I can only describe as the worst business decision in recorded human history. Here's the setup. West of Mongol territory sits the enormous, wealthy Khwarezmian Empire, modern Iran, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan. And Genghis, fresh off his Chinese campaigns, doesn't want to fight them. He sends a caravan of around 450 merchants with a message for the Shah that boils down to, "You rule the West, I rule the East. Let's get rich together." The governor of the border city of Otrar looks at this caravan, accuses the merchants of being spies, seizes all the goods, and executes them. He took his stuff. And here's the wild part. Genghis stays calm. Genghis Khan, of all people, chooses diplomacy.
He sends 3 envoys directly to the Shah, asking him to simply hand over the governor. The Shah kills the lead envoy and burns the beards off the other 2. Congratulations, Shah Muhammad. You've just ended your civilization. In 1219, Genghis personally leads well over 100,000 horsemen into Khwarezm in a multi-pronged invasion that military academies still study today. Otrar falls, and the governor who started all of this is executed, allegedly by having molten silver poured into his eyes and ears. Subtle. Bukhara falls. Genghis rides into the Great Mosque and informs the city's elites, in essence, "I am the punishment of God. If you hadn't committed great sins, God would not have sent me." Samarkand falls. Urgench falls so catastrophically that the river ends up running through the ruins. The Mongols deploy terror as deliberate strategy. Massacres, prisoners driven ahead of the army as human shields, skulls stacked into actual pyramids. All engineered so the next 10 cities surrender without a fight. Cities that had stood for 1,000 years stopped existing in an afternoon. And the Shah? The man who ruled 20 million people spends his final months sprinting across his own empire with Mongol generals on his heels, before dying broke and exhausted on a tiny island in the Caspian Sea, allegedly buried in a borrowed shirt because he no longer owned one. All of it, over some beards. His son Jalal al-Din fights on, and fights well. But by 1221, Mongol armies are rolling through Afghanistan, mopping up what's left. Meanwhile, 2 of those generals, Subutai and Jebe, ask the boss if they can take 20,000 riders and go exploring. What follows is the most terrifying road trip in history. They loop around the Caspian Sea, wreck every army they bump into, and in 1223, at the Kalka River, annihilate a coalition of Rus princes who massively outnumber them. Then, instead of conquering anything, they just leave. Europe's first contact with the Mongols was essentially a drive-by. Oh, and the captured princes? The Mongols laid them under a wooden platform and held the victory banquet on top of them. No royal blood spilled. By steppe standards, that was them being respectful.
Back east, there's unfinished business. Remember Shisha, the tutorial-level vassals? When Genghis had summoned troops from them for the Khwarezm campaign, their minister essentially replied, "If you don't have enough soldiers, maybe you don't deserve to be Khan." Genghis heard that, wrote it in the ledger, and went off to erase Khwarezm first. Then, years later, he came back. The man forgot nothing. The final campaign against Shisha, 1226 to 1227, is as brutal as anything he ever did. City after city, systematically dismantled. But Genghis is in his 60s now, and his health is failing. Some accounts say he'd been badly injured falling from his horse during a hunt the year before. 60-plus years in the saddle, undefeated by every empire on the continent. And it's the horse that finally lands a hit. On August 18th, 1227, in the middle of the siege of a Tangut stronghold, Genghis Khan dies. Of what, exactly? Nobody knows. Illness, internal injuries, take your pick. The sources can't agree. Which is fitting, because the mystery was just getting started. Per his wishes, his death is kept secret until the Tanguts are finished, and his body is carried home. He's buried in an unmarked grave somewhere in the Kentine Mountains, near where he was born. Legend says the funeral escort killed everyone they met along the route, trampled the site with 1,000 horses, and diverted a river over the grave for good measure. Overkill? Absolutely. But it worked. 800 years later, with satellites, drones, and entire archaeological expeditions on the case, we still have no idea where he is. History's greatest conqueror is also its undefeated hide-and-seek champion. Before dying, he'd sorted the succession. Sort of. At the family meeting, second son Chagatai flat out refused to accept Jochi as heir, loudly bringing up the whole 9 months after the kidnapping thing. Told you it would come back. So the compromise pick, third son Ogedei, becomes the next great Khan. The empire gets carved into chunks. Jochi's line takes the western steppe, the future Golden Horde. Chagatai gets Central Asia, Ogedei the eastern core, Tului the homeland, and his heirs keep expanding until the empire stretches from Korea to the edge of Europe, with grandson Kublai founding China's Yuan dynasty. And here's the twist ending.
The man who built his empire on terror accidentally manufactured peace. Under the so-called Pax Mongolica, the Silk Road becomes safer than it had ever been. There was a saying that a maiden carrying a pot of gold could walk across the whole empire unharmed. Trade explodes. Ideas, technologies, and, also the plague, move across continents like never before. Oh, and Genghis moved across the continent pretty effectively himself. Geneticists estimate millions of men alive today descend from his line. The man conquered the gene pool too. So who was he? Ask Iran, and he's a monster who erased entire civilizations and tens of millions of lives. Ask Mongolia, where his face is on the money and the airport, and he's the founding father. The uncomfortable answer is that both are true at the same time. And history doesn't offer refunds. But one thing is beyond debate. He came into this world clutching a blood clot, with no father, no tribe, and half the time, no dinner, and left it owning more of the map than anyone before or since. All because the world never learned the one rule: don't take his stuff.